Let me begin by adding my personal thoughts and prayers to those of the Secretary of Defense at the loss of the folks on that helicopter. A reminder to us that those who serve put themselves at risk both in training and in combat. And we will work with the services to ensure those survivors, or I should say their family members, will be well cared for.
And that was Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Martin Dempsey on the developing news out of Northwest Florida. The military says 7 Marines and 4 soldiers who were on that helicopter that crashed during a training exercise are presumed dead. The 7 Marines are part of a Marine Corps Special Forces based at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. The other 4 are from Louisiana National Air Force based in Hammond. Now, the groups were in the Panhandle to take part of training missions. The area where the helicopter crash is owned by the U.S. military and has been since before World War II. A military spokesman says they have been in the area since Sunday, and they were scheduled to stay through this Sunday. They were doing what the military is calling insertion and extraction missions. Fox News is committed to bringing you team coverage on this developing tragic event. As you understand, there are several angles to be covered here, and we've got them all for you. Fox News reporter Hal Sherrick is here with me in Navarre, just near the crash site, and we have our Rudy Harper at the base in Hammond, Louisiana. Meteorologist Matt Barentine is at the Fox 10 studio looking at the weather conditions that very much could have played a role in what happened overnight. We're going to check in with all of them in just a minute, but first, as you imagine, there are still a lot of questions being asked and what happened with this early or overnight tragedy. I can tell you this morning we got an update from the PAO, that is Public Affairs Officer. He said that helicopter went down at around 8 o'clock and that they had crews searching the area. They were supposed to give us more information as to what happened, but they couldn't talk about the details of the helicopter because they said it is owned by the military and directed us to talk to the Army, I should say, and directed us to talk to the Army National Guard. He was very specific, however, in saying that they are considering this right now a rescue and search operation. They are keeping every hope alive that despite the fog that has rolled in, as you can see behind me is very thick, that they are keeping all hope alive that some positive information will come out of this. We had our reporter Steve Alexander here earlier gathering all of those details for you about what happened overnight and getting more information from what happened this morning. We'll try to get you that information in just a few minutes. But first, let's get back to what's going on right here where I am right now. And as I mentioned, our Hal Sherrick is just about across the street from me at the area where the search is underway right now. We've got multiple agencies joining this effort. Hal, both you and I were here when all of the briefings were going on, and it's not necessarily that they're looking for all sorts of assistance from the public, correct?
That's right, Lenise. It's kind of yes and no. As you mentioned, multiple agencies involved in the search efforts, from local fire rescue, police, sheriff's department, of course, military personnel searching by the beachfront and by water, and briefly by air when there was a break in the fog. As you can see, it has settled back in and is very thick. Roads are open through here for the public. However, the waterways remain closed. An intercoastal waterway behind me in the Santa Rosa Sound here by the Navarre Beach Bridge that will be closed until further notice, I'm told. Now, officials have said that the public, if you happen to find debris along the beach, or if you actually witnessed anything around the time of the crash last night, they would like to hear from you. Now, as rescue boats moved in and out of dense fog banks this morning, a heavy smell of fuel filled the air. I could smell that here off the Santa Rosa Sound east of the Navarre Bridge. Along the shore, both citizens and search officials walked the beach, picking up any crash debris that washed ashore. Before 8 o'clock this morning, Eglin officials announced that along with aircraft pieces, some human remains had already been found. There are reports of debris being found over a long stretch of the north shoreline here. Some citizens, like Garrett Seehafer, were out early and led searchers to where they'd found remnants of the crash.
We seen a lot of debris over there, and we found a lot of gloves and military issue things, and man, we pray to God that they're still alive.
Yes, and officials say that the outpouring of support from this community has been tremendous. Folks just have come out of the blue, and businesses bringing searchers, food, water, and other drinks to help them along the way, and what you would expect from this community, just a big outpouring of support and a lot of concern and prayers, of course, going out to the families of those that are still missing and presumed dead. Now, they want people to know that they do have plenty of manpower. They do not want people walking the beach, particularly not picking up any debris. They do want to know about it. If you find some, they ask that if you find any debris that you believe is related to this crash, that you call the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office. They will then relay that information to the command center, which is just not far from me right now. Now, if you did hear something last night, or you bared witness to anything leading up to or during that crash, which was sometime around 8:30 last night, they ask that you call the Santa Rosa Fire Rescue. Call the fire department. They will then relay that information to the people that need to get it so that they can get back in touch with you, because they would like to talk to you. So that's how it looks right now from across the street here at the Sound. As you can see, still very dense fog. Very little air search was done today because there was only about a 15-minute break in the fog. So it's back to about like it was this morning at 8 o'clock. I'm sure everybody is hoping that this clears up so that searchers can continue those efforts. Reporting live here on Santa Rosa Sound, Hal Sherritt, Fox 10 News.
All right, thank you very much, Hal. And getting back to what Hal was talking about in terms of the search efforts there are 18 miles of Santa Rosa Island, right? And 13 miles of that is what they were using for the training facilities. So you know, that's the effort that's being concentrated right now in terms of the search and rescue operation. As I mentioned, we do have team coverage on this story. Major General Glenn Curtis of the Louisiana National Guard held a press conference on the National Air Base in Louisiana. Rudy Harper was there, and he's got the information on what happened at that press conference. Hi there, Rudy.
Hey, Lenise. Well, first I can tell you this tragic incident has taken a toll on this Hammond community. When we got into town, we saw flags already at half staff. And at that press conference, the Major General Glenn Curtis said the community of Hammond is bleeding. 4 military members on that training exercise are stationed here at the National Guard base. The names of those servicemen have not been released. We do know 2 were pilots and 2 were crew chiefs. The Major General said these were veteran pilots who had experience in combat and emergency response here on the home front. We also know the helicopters in this training exercise belong to the Hammond National Guard and do contain a flight recorder, flight data recorder. It's unknown if that flight data recorder has been retrieved at this time. Still a lot of questions if weather played a part in this training exercise.
Pilot in the Army, helicopter pilot in the United States Army, to include the National Guard, all have training requirements. And after they fly so many hours, they're considered highly experienced pilots. These 2 pilots are highly experienced. They're instructor pilots, have had combat hours in Iraq, and also domestic hours here supporting the homeland. So these were very experienced pilots.
The Major General also said the final investigation would come from the Fort Rucker Safety Center in Alabama. They have also asked that we not contact the family at this time. As we understand, they are grieving. The unfortunate news is that all these servicemen had wives and children. Reporting live from the Louisiana Army National Guard base, Rudy Harper, Fox 10 News.
All right, thank you, Rudy. And we also learning that 2 of those pilots were decorated. Of course, our thoughts and prayers are with the families involved. Getting back to the fog, right, because that's likely what played played a role, I should say, in this crash. And also, as you can see, it is pretty thick right now and dampening search and rescue operations at this hour. Let's take it to Fox 10 News meteorologist Matt Barentine. He's joining us now to break down exactly what the helicopter and crew and then also their searches are having to deal with. Matt, I can tell you won't necessarily have a lot of mist out here right now, but I mean, look behind me. You can see, well, actually you can't really see the bridge that takes you over to the beach.
Yeah, it's a particular type of fog called advection fog. We got some video around earlier today going around to some of our coastal areas. And anywhere where there's water, advection fog can form at this time of year. It's a very particular type of fog. What it needs is it needs cool water near shore, warm water offshore, and that wind blows from the south, from that warm water to the cool water. It cools the air off and it forms fog, very thick fog that is very hard to burn off. Let's go ahead and head on to the graphics here. You can see that here. You got warm water out here over the Gulf, southerly winds blowing to the cool water here near shore, and then that air cools off, get condensation, little water droplets, and that's when the fog forms, and it can be particularly thick and it can really hang around. It's hard to burn off this type of fog, especially near the water. In some cases, if the conditions are right, it can last like that all day long, and really for several days, like what we've been seeing in some spots. Here's the crash site and the crash conditions from last night around 8:30 here near east of Navarre. Hurlburt Field, just a couple miles away, was reporting 1 mile visibility with fog and mist. Destin was reporting 3/4 of a mile visibility with fog and mist. And it got worse overnight. So for the searchers, they went out and they ran into conditions at times that were less than 1/4 of a mile of visibility, and the boats couldn't contact each other by lights. They would blow horns out there when they were on the water so that they would know where each other was at. So that's the kind of conditions they'll be dealing with. And as Chassie's going to tell you here in just a minute, we're not done with this fog just yet. We've got more through the overnight hours tonight, guys.
All right, thank you, Matt. And as we've been mentioning, we have team coverage on this story for you. Fox News reporter Steve Alexander was here this morning when all of the efforts really started to get underway. Let's go to him now for the story of a timeline of when this all started.
The first news during the fog-shrouded morning hours was not good, but there was still some hope.
We had 2 aircraft participating in the training mission last night. One was reported missing at about 8:30 p.m. The other aircraft returned to base safely. There are search and rescue operations going on right now in the Navarre Sound, and we have some casualties.
Eglin Public Affairs spokesperson Mike Spates confirmed there were fatalities, but had no number.
We have found some debris from the aircraft. The fog is obviously hampering the recovery efforts.
But Spates maintained this was a search and rescue operation.
There's always hope. There's always hope.
As the fog lifted slightly, search crews of about 30 people took to Navarre Beach, closing a park area. They recovered a wheel believed to have come from the crashed helicopter, and the search continued throughout the day with boats, ATVs, and other units.
We are. I don't have an exact count of how many, but the citizens are calling us, and I would suggest that if anyone finds anything, first and foremost is don't touch it. Anything related to this crash, just call the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office at 850-983-1190.
But there were still questions as to why the accident happened and why the helicopter was flying in fog.
Well, they train how they would fight, so they would train in this type of environment.
Reporting from Navarre, Florida, Steve Alexander, Fox 10 News.
All right, so let's get back to what we know right now. We know that this is considered a search and rescue operation. Okay, so 13 miles of Santa Rosa Island is being concentrated because that's the area where the training facilities occur. We also know that debris has been washed up, but again, this is still considered a search and rescue operation. Weather has played a significant role in terms of the search and rescue, but multiple agencies are involved in the effort. We're talking federal, state, and local. Several Coast Guard boats are in the water right now helping in this search. We're going to stay on the scene here and keep you updated, give you any new information as soon as we receive it. But at last check, we were in a holding pattern because really they say the fog is dampening efforts right now, so there's nothing else to report in terms of where the status of the search and rescue operation stands at this hour. We will be posting live updates for you on fox10tv.com, our website. You can also log on to to our website for stories that we have been posting for you since this morning when our coverage began. That's going to do it for me here live in Navarre, just near Eglin Air Force Base. For now, I want to toss it back to the studio where my co-anchor Bob Grip is going to tell you about the stories also making headlines today. Bob?
All right, thank you, Denise. National leaders, including the president, are offering their condolences to those killed during today's crash. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter made the statement, and the White House press secretary spoke on the president's behalf.
Our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families as the search and rescue continues.
The President reassured the commanders of the nation's deep appreciation for the many sacrifices that our men and women in uniform and their families make to protect and defend our country. The President also expressed confidence that there would be a detailed and thorough investigation into this incident and what caused it.
And we'll have more reaction coming up on your most local news at 5. Florida after a military Black Hawk helicopter crashes during a training mission. All 11 service members on board are presumed dead. 7 of them are Marines. The others are National Guard members from Louisiana. Fox 10 News is bringing you live team coverage of the training tragedy. My co-anchor Lenise Lagan is live in Navarre. Reporter Hal Sherrick is on the Santa Rosa Sound where the helicopter crashed. And Rudy Harper is live in Hammond, Louisiana, where the 4 National Guard members presumed dead were based. We'll begin in Navarre with the latest on the investigation. Lenise?
All right, hi there, Bob. Yes, we are live here in Navarre, Florida. Heavy fog at this hour. You know, just take a look behind me. You can see the bridge leading into the beach is blanketed with a thick layer of fog. It has actually improved since we've been out here early this afternoon, but still, you know, this gives you an idea of what search and rescue crews are having to deal with in terms of the search. Now, rolling in, we saw several boats in the water. We saw tape blocking access to the beach area where 13 of 18 miles is being looked at right now. We understand that the 13 miles is where training facilities normally takes place on the 18 miles of Santa Rosa Island. We got in here at around 1 o'clock this, or excuse me, 2 o'clock this afternoon, and around 3:45 we received a brief update. All they would tell us at that hour is that the aircraft went down sometime last night during a nighttime training mission at Eglin Air Force Base. 11 service members, Bob, as you mentioned, on board. But we're talking about a skilled crew here, a lot of experience serving in Iraq and helping with humanitarian missions after Hurricane Katrina and the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. What we weren't told is just how long the aircraft was in the air before it went down. A number of agencies, I can tell you, here on the scene helping in this search. We're talking federal, state, local, Coast Guard boats in the water right now. And they tell us in terms of these searches, even though many hours has passed, you always have to hold out hope. And that's why they are calling this a search and rescue operation.
As you know, the fog has been hampering those operations throughout the morning and day, and as you can see right now, the fog is continuing to roll in. We are going to continue search and rescue through the evening. We've got Coast Guard boats that are still out in Santa Rosa Sound. There's always hope and optimism. We're still in search and rescue mode.
And that was the public affairs officer speaking there, Michael Spate. As you just heard, you know, this is a search and rescue operation. They are holding out hope. And as the search efforts continue throughout the night, we hope to learn more information. The Accident Investigation Board, we understand, will be drawing out a picture of exactly what happened. When we'll get that information remains to be seen. But of course, when it happens, we'll pass it on. Here's what we know about the 11 service members that were on that Black Hawk helicopter when it went down. 7 of them are part of Marine Corps Special Forces based at Camp Lejeune. That's in North Carolina. The other 4 are from Louisiana National Guard based in Hammond. The groups were in the Panhandle taking part in training missions. Now, the area where the helicopter went down is owned by the U.S. military, and that's been the case since before World War II. A military spokesman says there have been in the area since Sunday. They were scheduled to stay through this Sunday. They were doing what the military calls insertion and extraction missions. So let's go ahead now and take a closer look at the area where the helicopter went down. Military and law enforcement still have their command center east of the Navarre Beach Bridge area. The public park to the west is closed off. They continue that search and recovery operation at this hour. Visibility, as I mentioned, is a little better than what it was this morning, but still you have a thick layer of fog out there. We've been covering this story since it started. Fox News reporter Hal Sherrick has literally been here all day. He's joining us live from the Santa Rosa Sound. He's about, a couple yards away from me across the street there. And Hal, I understand there were quite a few people out even this morning just trying to do what they can to help.
That's right, Lenise, and that's certainly understandable. There's been quite an outpouring of concern and prayers for these servicemen and their families as the search continues. Roads through here are open if you need to drive through. That's not an issue. However, officials are asking any boaters to stay off of the water and Intercoastal Waterway behind me here in the Santa Rosa Sound until further notice. Now, if you have seen anything, any debris, or if you were witness to any of the events leading up to or during that crash last night, they would like to hear from you. As fog banks rolled in and out throughout the day, there were windows of opportunity for search vessels and helicopters to cover more territory. That wasn't the case early this morning as heavy blankets of fog enveloped Santa Rosa Sound here in Navarre. Along the shore, both citizens and search officials walked the beach, picking up any crash debris that washed ashore. Before 8 o'clock this morning, Eglin officials announced that along with aircraft pieces, some human remains had also been found. There are reports of debris being found over a long stretch of this north shoreline of the Sound. Jonathan Skinner lives on the Sound and found some honeycomb material and other items thought to come from the crash. He heard the news this morning, but a co-worker of his heard the crash and described what it sounded like.
He said he heard, it was like it was just spitting and sputtering, like it was something not running right. And then he heard this, he described it like propellers hitting the water, that's what he said. And that was around 8:30, 8:45.
Officials say the outpouring of support from this community has been tremendous. Citizens and businesses showing up, bringing the searchers food and drinks, and they certainly appreciate that. They do not, however, want or need any additional help searching. They have plenty of manpower and to do that. Now, they do want, if you do find any debris, there's a couple things you need to do. If you find any debris that washes ashore, they don't want you to move it yourself. They want you to contact the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Department. They will in turn get in touch with the right people at the command center here at the search site, and they will locate it. Now, if you did witness anything during or leading up to that crash last night, as you heard during that interview of that man's friend, if you heard anything like that, they want to hear from you. They need to know what you saw or what you heard. In that case, call the Santa Rosa County Fire Department. They will then get your information so that you can be contacted at a later time. Reporting live on Santa Rosa Sound in Navarre, Hal Sherrick, Fox 10 News.
All right, thank you, Hal. And as you mentioned, yes, this is a tight-knit community. A number of people have been coming out, even offering members of the media here at the command center something to drink and just thanking us for our coverage of this tragic event. As we mentioned moments ago, right, 4 of the service members are feared dead. The National Guard members, this is all based in Hammond, Louisiana, and that's where we find Fox News reporter Rudy Harper. He was there when Major General Glenn Curtis of the Louisiana National Guard held a news conference earlier today. Rudy, can you give us a recap of what was discussed?
Sure. Well, Lenise, I can also tell you that here in Hammond, the community is tight-knit with their military members also, and they are grieving. Flags are at half-staff. I checked in just a moment ago with the command center to see if I could gather any new details on what happened. At this time, they have nothing to provide. The Major General said today this is a search and rescue mission, still not a recovery mission. He also said he received calls from President Obama and the governor offering any help. The 4 military service members that were on that helicopter are stationed here at the National Guard base. The names of those servicemen have not been released. We do know 2 were pilots and 2 were crew members, or excuse me, 2 were chiefs. Chief Cruz, the Major General, said these were veteran pilots who had experience in combat and emergency response here on the home front. We also know the helicopter in this training exercise belongs to the Hammond National Guard and does contain a flight data recorder. It's unknown if that's been recovered at this time. This is how the base is handling the news.
Well, at first, you know, we all want to deny that it happened. There's a sense of, well, hopefully it's not our helicopter, and then reality sets in, and we get the information that it was in an accident, and then we all jump to our jobs. We're all highly trained to deal with these types of events. Certainly, our hearts go out to the families of the Marines and the soldiers, but we've got a job to do to take care of our soldiers and our families. So we're grieving, but we've got a mission to do.
The family are at this time with counselors from the base. We're also told that the 4 servicemen have wives and children. They've asked media not to contact the families at this time. The Major General also said that the final investigation would come from Fort Rucker Safety Center, and that is in Alabama. Reporting live from Hammond, Rudy Harper, back to you guys.
All right, Rudy, and obviously a lot of thoughts and prayers with the 11 servicemen family involved in this tragic incident. We're on the scene here live trying to gather more information for you. At around 3:45, we got the last update that we were told we would be receiving in that time frame, and all they would say at that time is that fog is hampering the search and rescue operation, and looking behind me, you can certainly see why. We're going to stay on top of this story. Fox10TV.com is your destination for all of the stories we've covered since this tragic news broke overnight. You can log on to Fox10TV.com to see all of the stories that we posted there for you. And stay with us here on Fox 10 News as we'll continue to break in and let you know if anything new develops in this story. For now, I'm going to toss it back to my co-anchor Bob Grip, who's in the studio now with the rest of the stories making headline this evening. Bob?
Thanks, Louise. Weather conditions last night at the time of the crash, as you could imagine, were just dominated by that thick fog you saw behind Lenise. Light showers and mist were also in the area. Fox 10 News meteorologist Matt Barentine joins us now to break down exactly what the helicopter crew and then the searchers had to deal with.
Yeah, that's right, Bob. Now, the typical kind of fog that we get around here is called radiational fog. Happens on a cooler, clear night. But this isn't the typical type of fog. We only get this type of fog, advection fog, in the late winter and early spring. And the reason that is because we need cool nearshore waters. You get a warm air mass offshore, it blows in over these cool waters, and that causes condensation in that air mass right above the water, and that creates the fog. So it's what we call advection fog. It is thicker than what we normally have with radiational fog, and it can last well into the day. It just doesn't burn off, and when the conditions are just right, it can last throughout the day and even for several days like what we've been seeing here lately. Now, last night, the conditions out there near the crash site east of the Navarre Bridge, Hurlburt Field, which is only a couple miles away, was reporting about a mile visibility with fog and mist. Destin was reporting 3/4 of a mile visibility with fog and mist. And overnight, these conditions worsened. We had, for the searchers, dropping down to 1/4 mile or less of visibility. So certainly fog has been a major issue out here with this search and rescue mission and with everything going on around this helicopter crash over just east of Navarre. So it's and it's something we're going to continue to deal with, like what they were just showing with the fog overnight tonight on into tomorrow morning. We do have a dense fog advisory until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Now, Fox 10 News is bringing you continuing coverage of this training tragedy throughout the hours. We'll bring you more live reports from Navarre and Hammond, Louisiana later in the newscast. And by the way, if you took any pictures of the debris on the beach, please send them to report@fox10tv.com. We're also posting updates for you on our website, fox10tv.com.
You're watching Fox 10 News in high-definition television.
And Fox 10 News is continuing to follow that tragedy in Northwest Florida. 11 service members are presumed dead after a training crash in the Santa Rosa Sound near Navarre. The helicopter that went down is a Sikorsky UH-60 Blackhawk from the Army National Guard. You're looking at pictures from the Defense Department showing different Blackhawks. The U.S. Navy uses similar helicopters from Sikorsky. Now, this is video of one on display at Battleship Memorial Park in Mobile. The Navy calls them the Seahawks. The Coast Guard calls its Sikorsky helicopters Jayhawks. At this time, we don't know what caused the helicopter to go down, but we did talk to an expert who says there are so many parts, anything could have happened.
But anything could go wrong in an instant. I mean, there's just so many parts in these things. Just one bolt shearing at any particular time, and then if you're close to the water, you're close to the ground. No matter what you do, how good you are, you don't have enough time to correct.
These helicopters have a lot of purposes that can be used to move cargo or troops and perform search and rescue. During a Senate Foreign Relations Committee meeting this morning, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, offered his condolences to those affected by the tragedy.
Let me begin by adding my personal thoughts and prayers to those of the Secretary of Defense at the loss of the folks on that helicopter. A reminder to us that those who serve put themselves at risk both in training and in combat. And we will work with the services to ensure those survivors, or I should say their family members, will be well cared for.
At that same hearing, the Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, shared his thoughts.
I'm sure you're all aware that a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter was involved in an accident last night near Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. We know there were 4 air crew, Army from a National Guard unit in Hammond, Louisiana, and 7 Marines assigned to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, on board that helicopter. And know that with me, our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families as the search and rescue continues.
The White House says President Obama expressed his condolences to the families of those killed. A spokesman for the president said he is confident there will be a detailed and thorough investigation of the crash.